First of all, let me thank IPRI for inviting me to take part in this discussion, and uh, my two very distinguished colleagues have made brilliant presentations. I would like to focus on uh, the bilateral uh, issues, the issues between Pakistan and Afghanistan, the issues of peacemaking, and what Pakistan and regional countries' role would be and should be in those endeavors. Uh, it appears likely that the peace talks are about to begin uh, uh, very soon. Uh, the start of the peace talks between Taliban and the Afghan government, uh, although there were many hurdles which have been gradually overcome, the biggest hurdle was the release of the prisoners. Prisoners have been released, a large number of them, paving the way now for the commencement of formal negotiations between Taliban and the government delegation. But uh, the devil is in the detail. The problem is the stance of the Taliban and the Afghan government. They are poles apart. Uh, and it is so difficult to establish any convergence of perceptions between the two stakeholders, between the two groups, between the two sides. The, the Taliban uh, Taliban believe that they have been removed from power in 2001 by the military invasion of the United States of America, and that position has to be restored. This is their basic principle stance. The other side believe that there is a country, there is an elected government, there is an elected parliament, and the Taliban are welcome to join and become mainstream in the democratic process. These two positions are poles apart. They appear to be totally irreconcilable with each other. How to bring them together, uh, how to make them reconcile with each other, it's a Herculean effort. And I think here the role of the United States would be crucial and would be very, very important. The reason is Ashraf Ghani's government, though it is an elected government, it lacks legitimacy on many fronts. Number one, Ghani secured less than 1 million votes in a population of 35 million. Uh, Ghani's government does not have control over more than 50% of the territory. Then it is so awfully dependent on American and NATO assistance, both. Uh, so the Americans will have to come in a big way to bridge the gap between the Taliban position and the government position. And that, in my view, can be done by the age-old institution of convening a Loya Jirga. In the present setup, there was no position of a chief executive in the Afghan constitution, but a Loya Jirga was convened and a Loya Jirga created that position. Now the Loya Jirga will have to create, in my view, an interim multi-ethnic broad-based government that would be headed by the Taliban, but that would include all other ethnic factions, other political factions. this will not be easy to achieve because the Afghan government would not like uh, to be dismantled. The Afghan government still believes that it is a legitimate government and it derives legitimacy from the mandate of the people of Afghanistan. That, as I said, is right in theory, but in practice, that is disputed, that is questionable because of a host of factors. This is the dilemma now facing the Americans, and this is the dilemma facing the Afghans as a whole, and the Taliban, as well as the delegation of the Kabul government, which is going to participate in the discussions. Uh, I think that the Taliban will have to relax, that have show flexibility on a lot of issues. Number one, they will have to incorporate in any new government of which they are a part their old adversaries, their political adversaries, people of other ethnicities, including Hazaras, including Tajiks, including Uzbeks, including Turkoman, including many others. They will have to announce a general amnesty for the crimes that people may have committed in the past in order to create a conducive atmosphere in the country for peace to be sustained and for peace to be established. Uh, the Kabul government will have one or two options. Either they stick to their position, they risk the failure of the talks, and the failure of the talks would result in a chaos and instability and more factional fighting and more insurgency, more deaths, more displacement of human people of human beings, and more economic uncertainty. I think that will have inevitably its impact on the regional countries, including Pakistan. So that eventuality at all cost must be avoided. Rather than being led by partisan vested interests, they should have, under pressure from America, they should have in view the larger national interest of Afghanistan, and those interests would demand that the unity and stability of Afghanistan is more sacrosanct than the constitution or the parliament or the elected government. They are also sacrosanct, but the unity and integrity of Afghanistan is more important, more crucial, more sacrosanct. If that is not done, as I said, then chaos would follow. Then chaos would follow, and not only that, Taliban would be pitted against foreign forces and the Kabul government forces, but there would be more room for exploitation by groups such as Fidai Mahaz, such as Daesh, and such as Turkestan Islamic Movement. The role of regional countries, China, Russia, both have established close links with the Taliban in the last 1.5 years. Visits have taken place. There are reasons for that. Both China and Russia believe that Daesh and the Turkestan Islamic Movement, Uzbekistan Islamic Movement, Fidai Mahaz could pose a serious threat to the areas, to the Xinjiang province and the Central Asian republics which border with Russia. So they both believe that any government that does not have Taliban would not be able to crush, eliminate, or dismantle the brutal outfit like Daesh. For similar reasons, Iran they've also established relations now with Taliban because they also believe that Daesh could pose a threat to their eastern border, that is the border with Afghanistan. So these countries have their own interests, and they believe, China also believes, that only a stable, peaceful Afghanistan would be in a position to deliver uh, on the CPEC project, on One Belt One Road project, which is of such primary concern to China these days. So for these reasons, these countries now believe and they would welcome a government that is headed by the Taliban and that can deliver peace and that can unite the country. Uh, the role of India. Uh, India, let us admit, India has an investment of about $3 billion rehabilitation reconstruction in Afghanistan, uh, in a large number of sectors, and there are many Afghans who are being trained, many students, male and female, who are being educated in India. Many Afghan technocrats, bureaucrats are being trained in India, uh, and many people go and seek medical help, medical treatment in India. And after our um, our, our flawed policy on creating obstructions and impediments in the way of trade, Pakistani Afghanistan trade has now dropped from $3 billion to just $300 million. And the trade is now taking place via Chabahar uh, route, and India is benefiting, Iran is benefiting, Afghanistan is benefiting. The only loser again is Pakistan. Uh, Pakistan should not have created impediments and obstacles in its trade with Afghanistan uh, via Karachi or via Gawada. The Torkham and Chaman routes could have been better managed, but that was not done. And as a result, as I said, now the trade that was about $3 billion 2 years ago, 3 years ago, is now about 300 to $400 million. That's a net loss, uh, and I think that Pakistan is going to suffer. People are going to suffer on account of this loss of trade with Afghanistan. Uh, then there is an obsession with the role of India. Let me tell you that it is Pakistan's right to demand that Afghan soil would not be allowed to be used against Pakistan covertly or overtly, directly or indirectly. Pakistan must demand this, and Afghanistan has to concede this. We will not allow Afghan territory to be used against Pakistan in any form, in any shape. But having said that, Afghanistan is an independent sovereign country. It needs help. India is providing help. India needs the hydrocarbon resources of Central Asia. India needs to trade with Afghanistan and Central Asia. And there should be nothing wrong with India expanding its ties, commercial ties, economic ties, political ties with Afghanistan. That I think we must try to understand. This obsession creates problems for us in Afghanistan because uh, Afghans believe that Pakistan has been dictating to Afghanistan in the formulation of its foreign policy. As one of my very distinguished predecessors in this conference stated, that Pakistan is not liked in Afghanistan for a host of reasons. Now let me also refer to the other issues that we have. The border fencing has generated enormous hostility in Afghanistan. It has cost Pakistan $1 billion, and millions of dollars would be invested, would be required to maintain this wall and the deployment that we will need to guard this against any possible incursion of terrorists. Now, there was no terrorism 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and people used to come and go and cross into each other's territory without any passports or visas, and there were no problems. Instead of dealing with those problems, we have now resorted to this huge project of fencing the border. Now, what does fencing mean? It means separating, bifurcating the tribes. Trade has been disrupted, commerce has been disrupted, cultural relations have been disrupted. There are people who own lands on the other side living on this side, and vice versa. Those people can't visit their properties and their crops. What is going to happen to them? And was it worth it? We are digging trenches with our border with Iran. India is an eternal enemy. So in the 21st century, so we are having these strained relations with with three principal neighbors. What is going to happen to Pakistan? Then of course there are problems of visas and passports, which have become so difficult now for Afghans to get visiting Pakistan. There are still 1.4 million registered Afghan refugees and about 1 million other non-registered Afghan refugees. So they need to go from time to time to their own country and people need to come to visit them. That is no longer possible. That is also creating bitterness, hostility, hatred against Pakistan on a very alarming scale. And the reservoir of goodwill is fast now eroding because of our flawed policies again. Uh, what is the way forward? Pakistan, let me emphasize that no country would benefit as much from Afghanistan's peace as Pakistan. And no country would suffer as much from Afghanistan's instability as Pakistan. So other countries may have stakes, other countries may have concern, Pakistan have stakes in Afghan peace. But this impression of supporting one group or the other, one faction or the other, one leader or the other must be removed. That is for the Afghans. We should not get it. There was a time when we were supporting Professor Abani. There was a time when Hikmatyar was our darling. There was a time when Taliban became our favorites. And then there was a time when we became a party to the dismantling, destruction of that very Taliban government, with the most pro-Pakistan government in Afghanistan history. And we became a part in bringing that government down by providing air bases and all that, and arresting people and delivering them to the Americans. Taliban would never forget that. Afghans would never forget that. So now let us learn lessons from the history. Let us leave what government, what system of government the Afghan want, whether it is an Islamic emirate or a hybrid or a democratic government, whether they want to go to an election, whether they want to have an interim government. Let us leave all this to the Afghans. We can help wherever our help is required and needed in the larger interest of peace in Afghanistan. We need not only peace to secure our border, we need peace so that Afghan refugees could go back. We need peace in Afghanistan for us to promote and deepen our economic ties with Central Asia. There is the Turkmenistan gas pipeline project, and there is the Kasa 1000, bringing in electricity from Tajikistan. These projects and many more would only be completed if there is peace in Afghanistan. CPEC, One Belt One Road, would only deliver when there is complete peace in Afghanistan. So for us, peace is vital for our economy, for our stability, for peace on our western borders. It is imperative that there is peace in Afghanistan. Let us work wholeheartedly to achieve that objective. by staying clear from any issue that would be attributed to us as, as something that Pakistan has had a hand in for creating or promoting its vested interests or for promoting the interests of a party or a faction or a leader that Pakistan has close ties with. I think that has been our biggest failure in the past. Supporting one group or the other, supporting one faction, one leader or the other. That should no longer be the case in future. And let us also be very clear about India's role in Afghanistan. And let us also try to understand what the Chinese, Russians, Iranians would want to achieve in Afghanistan. It should not necessarily be in conflict with what we want in Afghanistan. As I said before, and let me repeat, and this is the last point that I'm going to make, that peace in Afghanistan is indispensable for a host of reasons. Afghanistan is currently in a terrible shape. 40 to 45,000 people are leaving Afghanistan unauthorizedly each month. 45% is the unemployment rate. 70% of Afghans need psychological treatment for traumatic disorders, depression, and other mental illnesses. Many Afghans, hundreds of thousands of them, have crossed into Syria, Turkey, and Eastern and Western Europe. Many have drowned in the sea. Things are, from economic point of view, in a very bad shape. Afghanistan needs $4.5 billion only for the upkeep of its police and army, and it hardly generates about $2 billion in revenue each year. So what about the other sectors? So Afghanistan is so heavily dependent on foreign assistance, but it has lots of resources. About according to surveys, Afghanistan sits on mineral reserves worth more than $1.5 trillion. If only peace were to return, it will create conditions for this. So the way forward, we can't say at this point in time whether the talks would work out and would deliver a positive outcome, or whether in the event of the failure of the talks, there would be chaos and there would be more uncertainty and there would be more and bitter insurgency, something that would spread. The instability of Afghanistan would affect the borders of Pakistan, of other countries, and that is an eventuality that we must try to avoid at all costs. Thank you very much.